Yo, good day, gents, and welcome to another episode of Father's Fire. My name's Jody Cedric, and every week we get together to explore the joys, the challenges, the triumphs, the sorrows, and yes, the fun of being a dad. And I tell you, this weekend has been a mix of fun as I was able to go out and spend the morning with my sister and brother-in-law and their kids and spend some time on the lake, and we just had a fantastic time and but also a little bit of sorrow. Friday night, I got a call from a very dear friend who was sucker punched with the news that he lost a cousin to suicide. And he reached out to me and said, "Hey, Jody, can I talk to you? I have a really, really heavy heart, and I know that you've gone through it, and I would just love to bend your ear to get some of your experience and most importantly some of your love." And I tell you, he and I had a beautiful conversation. It was tough, it was raw, there was a lot of pain, a lot of searching for answers of why, asking himself, and I've done it too. As a young man, my uncle committed suicide, and I very clearly remember the day that my father got the call. We were sitting at the table, and I very distinctly remember every aspect about that evening, and how it impacted my dad, and watch him literally crumple into the floor with the news of the death of his brother. Also have dealt with teen suicide and or attempted teen suicide multiple times in our family, and that has caused many questions within our own home of, you know what did we miss, what could I have done more, how do we help our kids that are left behind in their own questions. How do we deal with their own questions of loss, of shock, of anger, of sorrow, of love, of going, man, why didn't they just come to me? And one of the things that I have really come to realize that it's not so much that the people who commit suicide that they want to die. In fact, I don't think they want to die. They just want the sorrow and the pain that is in their heart, the darkness that is on their mind, that it will go away. And they're doing anything in their mind that will take away that pain. And what I've realized is that sometimes they don't know how to express what's on their heart. So they buckle up, they put on a smile, they act like nothing's going wrong. And then all of a sudden, you wake up to the news that you lost someone very near and dear to you. And in fact, as I was visiting with this friend, he goes, I had no clue there was anything going on. I thought everything was okay. And it's made me look back on our experience with suicide, and it's made me go, all right, what did I learn through the process? What could I have done better? Who could I have been as a father that would have been more meaningful for my child, right? To have that impact. But I think a lot of times we tend to look at, we tend to look at it from the lens of two things, like, oh, that was just selfish. Why didn't they just turn to me? I'm here all the time. Or we go from the perspective of blaming ourselves for not seeing what we should have seen when it wasn't that obvious. I know that when we were going through the teen phases of suicide in our life, I mean, we had multiple attempts in with one of our children, and I could, over time, I began to see patterns that would lead up to it, patterns of having bad relationships with friends or with siblings, or just not being of being misunderstood and not being heard. And sometimes what I've realized is that these people that are wrestling with these thoughts, they don't even know what the real problem is. And so I started recognizing that there were certain situations that would start to send our child on a spiral. And if I could catch it early enough, it would enable them to go, all right, you know what, this isn't as critical of an issue as it is, or it appears to be, and they can make the adjustments to move forward. It's such a delicate thing, because as you are um, walking through this with your loved ones, I know Judy and I had a lot of questions about what we could have done better. And we had to really, really lean into each other. We had to rely on each other. We had to be open with each other. We had to be able to share what was on our heart. And sometimes what was on our heart wasn't necessarily positive. It was like going, man, it's easy to slide into the negative yourself. And so we had to really rally around each other as a couple and as a family, because one of the things that I think a lot of times, especially with attempted suicide, is we have a tendency to focus just on the person that is dealing with the emotional trauma that is going in their life and has gone on their life, but fail to recognize that decision, that situation that is impacting their life, is rippling across all of the siblings' life as well. And so they have their own questions. So you, as a husband, as a father, as the leader of your home, you have to recognize that you have to tend to all of the emotional needs of all of your children that are affected by this decision. And that can be really challenging, because you yourself are asking, what the heck went wrong? And what I've come to realize is that you need to become the strength while finding the strength. And the way you build the strength for others and be the strength for them is pouring into them, right? As you pour your heart into them, to give of your time, to give of your ear, of your empathy, of your caring and your love, that service towards other has a natural consequence of lifting you up. And sometimes it's not enough, and you yourself need to have your bucket filled. I look back, and there were men in my life that had a huge impact. Just like my friend called me on Friday, there were men who were calling me and checking in on me, or I could call them and say, hey, you know what? Can I come to your house? Can we go for a drive? Can we go get a milkshake, some French fries? I need a man to talk to. And I know that you're not going to fully understand the experience that I'm going through, but I need a friend. And I love, I'm currently reading the book Service by Marcus Luttrell. And he said this, he said, the only way out of hell is to walk through it. When you do, it always helps to have your brothers by your side. A lot of us are walking through hell. There are things happening in our family, or have happened in our family, that we still have not been able to work through, right? And the only way through it is through it. And I tell you, it makes a huge, huge difference when you have a wife, a friend, a confidant, that, somebody that you can go, look, you may not have the answers, but man, can I lean on your strength? Can you be the strength that I need at this moment? And I tell you, there were so many times, especially when Reed Young would give me a shout and say, Jody, I just feel like you need some help. Like, what's going on with your family? You need a break. And he'd come over and say, let's go for a drive. And he and I would get in our convertibles and chase each other, driving a little too fast on these curvy roads. And then we would zip, zip, get that adrenaline. And then we would stop out by Lake Lowell, and we would step out and we would just visit and talk and commiserate and laugh and receive counsel and express the feelings of my heart. And so you, as the person trying to help somebody dealing with these thoughts, you need to take care of yourself as well, but recognize that you have to lean into your kids. And it's tough, like he said, Mark Luttrell, he said, the only way out of hell is through hell. And so you got to dig in and you got to find the strength. You got to become more than you ever thought you would be. I think one of the things, as I was talking to my friend, he said, one of the things that I'm really struggling with is there are people in our family that don't even want to talk about it. They just want to push it under the rug like it never happened. In fact, there's even some people are saying, well, we shouldn't even have a funeral for him. And I'm like, man, dude, you don't know what was going on through their heart at the time, right? And there's so many things that we don't understand about the trauma that they were going through, that we still need to recognize the beauty of their life. Yes, it ended tragically, but there was still beauty in their life. And pushing something aside because you don't know how to deal with it, you're ashamed about it, you're angry about it, does not solve the problem. In fact, if you push it aside, all it does is it sets the stage for other people in your family who may be struggling with similar emotions, similar feelings. It sets the stage for them to not want to raise their hand, to raise their voice, to ask for help, because they're afraid that their problems will be just pushed aside and not considered of weight. I think one of the challenges that we have too is we tend to judge people out of the lens of our own experience. We look at them and go, oh, it's not that bad. Well, it may not be that bad for you, but it may be a huge mountain for them. And I look at, my own child who had some very heavy trauma as a young child, and trying to wrestle with that from the age of 4 and trying to identify their place, their value, why this happened to them. Was it their fault? What could they have done differently? Why now am I worthy of love? And I remember really distinctly one night, things had not gone so well at home. And my daughter, just in a fit, left the house. My son went after her, and he's trying to help her, and she just was not ready to receive the help. And he said, Dad, I need you to go. And I'm like, okay. So I went and I exited my house. I mean, this is like 2 a.m. at night. I had no idea where she was. And so I prayed. I said, where do I go? And so I walked down to the end of the road and I said, which way, left or right? And a little voice whispered in my head, go right. And I got down to the end of that road and I'm like, all right, left or right, which way do I go? The voice in my head whispered, go left. And not 300 feet down the road, there was my daughter. And she's like, why are you coming after me? I said, because I love you. She goes, why do you love me? I'm not worthy of love. I go, yes, you are. And no matter what you think or feel, I will always love you. And she's like, well, I don't need you. And I just kept, she kept walking away from me and I kept walking towards her. And I was about 2 or 3 steps and she kept asking, why do you keep following me? Why? Why do you love me? Why do you want to keep pursuing me? I said, I will always pursue you. You may not be ready to open up, but I will always be within arm's reach of you so that you can turn around when you're ready and fall into my arms, and we will work together through the process. And I know that we're not going to have all of the answers all at once, but I'm always going to be within arm's reach of you. And that's what I would tell every single one of you. If you have loved ones who are struggling with the addiction, with self-doubt, of having absolutely no self-worth, they're depressed, they're anxious, they don't want to get up, they have no motivation, don't be the voice of condemnation. Be the voice of, I'm not sure what's going on in your life, but I'm going to walk through it with you. And whether you need to be in my arms or at the side of my arms, or you want me to be within arm's length, I'm going to give you the space that you need so that you can grow together and know that Dad's got your back, that I'm going to walk with you through this journey. And it's so incredibly important that we as men develop greater love, greater tendency, greater tenderness, and a greater tendency for empathy, of trying to understand rather than trying to solve all the problems. Because a lot of times what your kids need more than anything, and your loved ones, what they need more than anything, is not for you to solve the problem. They need you to love them through the problem. They need you to walk with them through hell. They need you to walk with them through hell, not with an attitude of condemnation, but with an attitude of, I don't have all of the answers. I will give you the counsel that I can when you're ready to receive it. But the most important thing is, I'm going to love you through this process. And it's painful. Sometimes you just don't have the answers. And in my book, Learn to Dance with the Currents of Life When You Feel Like You're Drowning, I wrote a poem. And it really hit, I think a lot of us men struggle with this because, we have the 22 days. I mean, there's one vet every 22 days that commits suicide. There are so many men that are walking through this life with heavy, heavy wounds, and they're trying to figure out how to heal themselves while carry the burdens of their families. And there's teens who are going, man, I don't know how to walk through this stage of my life and feel loved and feel appreciated and feel like I have value. And a lot of times we're walking purposely and unintentionally, we're walking alone. And I think sometimes the feelings of our heart are like this poem that I wrote. And I'd like to read it to you. It's called Roar. When you feel like crying, when you just feel like giving up, when you want to scream at the world, roar in your heart. Roar in your silent prayers. Roar in your anguish. Roar through the tears and clenched teeth. Roar as you rise to face the day. No one will ever hear the roar of your heart, but they will see it in the way that you stand. Roar. Man, we need to stand with our children. And I think a lot of times we don't have the answers and we feel impotent. We feel at a loss because we can't solve the problems. And while I think a lot of times we want to solve the problem. That is not necessarily our role to solve the problems. Our role is to guide them and walk them through the problems so that they can develop their own strength, their own understanding, their own appreciation for their natural gifts and the person that they are, to develop an appreciation for them. And it's hard. It's really, really hard to see your loved ones suffer and struggle. But at the same time, we got to give them space to walk through that. And we need to always be within arm reach. And so if your loved one is struggling with depression, anxiety, with trying to figure out their place in the world, they're dealing with thoughts of suicide, your greatest tool is just leaning into them, loving them, walking with them. I mean, we walked through our journey for almost 7 years. I mean, it was a long time, and things are good now. Things are really good, but they don't always end that way. And so then the question comes, what did I miss? What didn't I do? What could I have done better? And I think all of us, what we can do better is just loving each other. Just loving each other. Because I'm telling you, there is power in kindness. There's power in empathy. There's power in understanding. There's power in love. And if we as men can be the central focus, the central point of love in our family, we can make a world of difference, not only on them, but that love will ripple across all of the connections in our life. So guys, thank you so much for joining me. I hope that this gives a little bit of hope. If you or a loved one is struggling with thoughts of suicide, the suicide prevention line is 988. They've simplified it. It's 988. But one of the things that I've always struggled with, and I love that service. I'm glad it's there for people. But man, wouldn't it be better if your loved one could call you? So be available, be understanding, be empathetic, and be the strength they need while you're finding the strength for yourself. You guys have a fantastic day, and we will check you same time, same bat channel, just next week, right here on Father's Fire. See ya!